This is WWE superstar Drew McIntyre, and you're listening to the WWE Podcast.
The champ is
the one that everybody wants, me.
It's going to WrestleMania. Claymore! Austin 316 says I just whipped your ass.
This is my iron. You're going to acknowledge me.
Welcome, everybody, to the Mailbag here on this Friday, July 25th, 2025. Hope everyone's ready for the weekend, enjoyed their week. Busy one, I'm sure, as it always seems to be. And we're about to close out July. And in 1 week, it'll be SummerSlam. But the wrestling world doesn't seem to be wanting to talk about SummerSlam. We'll talk about that a little bit about Roman Reigns and some other topics that the listeners bring up today. But it's a lot of Hogan. As you'd imagine, I gave my thoughts in detail last night, so I'm going to try not to rehash them the best I can, or at least come up with some new thoughts. I know hearing the same thing over and over is no fun. So I will be hearing from you guys via email and maybe a voicemail or two. If you want to get in on the voicemail action, by the way, you can call us and leave a voicemail. I promise I won't pick up. It's Google Voice, so it doesn't go to my phone. And it's 518-952-0247. That is the name or the phone number you can call, leave a voicemail, and it can be up to 2 minutes long or 3 minutes long, and it'll cut you off. The other thing before we get going, unrelated note, if you like to listen to other podcasts that have nothing to do with wrestling, you like kind of creepy stories, if you like ghost stories, you like a little bit about cryptids or murder or true crime, but real stuff, I have a YouTube channel and a Patreon. Okay. It's Real Eerie Truth. That's Real Eerie Truth. We just got off the ground here. Only a handful of subscribers at this point, but we're going to ramp it up and hopefully up the production as we move on here. And it's just something I've always been interested in with Bigfoot and the cryptids and everything else. It's fascinating. And I'm not actually the one that narrates it. I have another way to have that narrated. And I'd encourage you to check it out. It's called Real Eerie Truth. And we just posted our video, our second one ever, last night about the smiley face murders. And one that I never heard of before, but I'm now officially creeped out. I was creeped out as I was making the video. So check us out on Patreon. You can go ad-free there or on YouTube as well at Real Eerie Truth. If you want to support us, of course, Patreon's the best place to go. There's only one tier. I didn't make any fancy tiers. It's just one to support us if you'd like. All right. Well, let's get to you guys. That's what this show's for. And let's start off. Should be a fairly quick one. Let's start off with Andrew from Flint. And he says, Gunther must defeat Punk at SummerSlam. The "you tapped out" chants are really hurting the mystique of the character. I'm still in awe that WWE would allow him to lose the title that way. Gunther beating Punk at SummerSlam would be the best way to repair what they broke. That's certainly one way to look at it. I'm a bit skeptical on that only because they're trying to build Punk for an eventual title run. I just don't know if right now is the time. It doesn't seem like the timing is right. Gunther just got it back. They're trying to rebuild Gunther after the somewhat disastrous decision. And I say disastrous because they corrected course in a way that I've never seen WWE change course so quickly after a title change, major title change at WrestleMania. I don't even recall the closest parallel to that. I don't know the last time they did that in essentially just admitting, hey, this ain't cutting it. We tried, ain't doing it. That's what they did by giving the belt back to Gunther. But now they've got damage control to do on Gunther. And they can't just give back the title or take it off of Gunther and give it to Punk. I don't think people would be up in arms, but I'm thinking about this a little bit maybe too logically, that this belt would have been in 3 hands in about 3 months. But I wouldn't lose my mind. I just feel like Gunther needs a much longer run with it before that happens to do some kind of repair on his character. I agree with you about Jey Uso not feeling like a world champion. I think the IC championship looked great on him, though. The title just felt like it fit Jay. Never once during the 2-week period where he held the IC championship did I think it looked odd on him. He is the perfect candidate for an Intercontinental Championship. He's a guy that's over, super over. He has a nice connection with the fans, a really good connection with the fans. He's a veteran, tons of respect from the fans directed at Jey Uso. He can work really well. It just seems to fit him. And usually Intercontinental Champions don't have to be cutting A+ promos. That's not the expectation of an Intercontinental Champion. The expectation of an IC champ is to bust your ass in matches, get the crowd interested, and have the crowd care who's holding that belt. And Jey Uso checks every box. It's just there's something missing with the world title run with Jey. There's something there that Jey didn't have. I think WWE, and there were reports that came out that they felt like he just didn't have the appeal, the aura of a champion. And I would agree. And, his flubs with the promos with Gunther, that Gunther had to help him out in the promos. He had a couple of good ones, but the majority of them have been yeets and a lot of words you can't understand and all the rest. And again, I'm not knocking him as a person, just as a wrestler, as a performer. There is that mystique, that championship aura mystique that from the time he won the Rumble until the time he beat Gunther and beyond, that he just didn't have that extra X factor that champions have, that aura, that feeling, that intangible. He didn't have it. Will he ever get it? Maybe, and I hope he does. But clearly WWE felt the same way, or they wouldn't have corrected course so quickly after WrestleMania. I'm starting to get annoyed with Rhea always in the championship picture. The following are all in the Women's World Championship matches in 2025. This is a nice stat. I like how you pulled this out there, Andrew. So January 6th on Raw, Rhea Ripley defeats Liv Morgan to win the Women's Championship. January 25th, at Saturday night's main event, Rhea Ripley defeats Nia Jax to retain. March 3rd on Raw, Io Sky beats Rhea Ripley to win the Women's World Championship. Really in a shocking victory that close to WrestleMania. Remember that? It was shocking. But again, it ended up working out very well for Io, and we got a hell of a match as we knew we would. March 31st, we again on Monday Night Raw had Io Sky defend against Rhea Ripley. And April 20th, we had WrestleMania 41 with Io Sky defeating Rhea Ripley and Bianca Belair. July 13th, Evolution, Naomi beats Io Sky and Rhea Ripley. And at what point can we have a world title match without Rhea Ripley? I understand her star power. It just feels like I'm seeing the same movie over and over again. Well, I think the answer is we're about to get that. I mean, Rhea Ripley seemingly moving into the tag team scene for maybe a brief moment, maybe. But you're right. I mean, the common denominator in all 6 of these examples from January through July, all include Rhea Ripley. Every championship match has to involve Rhea. Here's the kind of the conflict of interest here. Because if you're in WWE's shoes, you have a woman that is over. She is one of the faces of the company, not just the face of the women's division. She is one of the faces of the company. She is super over. And I'm happy for her. And you have a star that big. And the main events for the women typically include the Women's World Championship and or Women's WWE Championship. And the question would be, well, if we're going to have women in that spot competing for the championship, how do we not have our biggest star in the women's division and one of the biggest stars just overall in that match? Because it helps with ratings. It helps continue to build Rhea and build the women that she's working with. So there's a good, strong argument to continue to put Rhea in those matches. Now, Rhea has kind of reached the point almost where she doesn't need the championship, where it doesn't feel like if she doesn't get it, she's not going to move forward. You could again argue she's past that. She's past having to be made by the championship. She can help build liquidity or value in the championship. That's where she's at now. The belt's not making her. She's helping make the belt by chasing it, adding value to said belt. But Rhea Ripley is one of the biggest stars, and WWE is trying to utilize that. Now, they also have to toe a fine line here because she could eventually get the Charlotte Flair effect of just constantly being in the title picture, being discussed, somehow sneaking in, making it a triple threat, always somehow keeping herself in the conversation for the women's championship. So they need to be weary of that. Because if the goal is to keep her a babyface, and I think it should be for at least the short term, then you need to be mindful of the fans at some point, maybe getting a little bit weary of her constantly being in the title picture instead of letting the women's division breathe a bit with with Io Sky, who is just, Io Sky has opened my eyes over the last year, and I know that she's been there all along, and every time she gets in the ring, and I've said that over the years, that every time she gets in there and wrestles, it's just like, oh wow, where the hell has this been? I've said that over the years, and then they, kind of hide her away, tuck her away underneath, in a suitcase somewhere, and you don't see her wrestle again for a while or being put in a big spot. But the last year, since she's gotten her opportunity, she has kicked ass. Io Sky could easily be the top woman there. I know that we have Naomi now, which no complaints here. Naomi has earned it. She's found her gimmick. The Raw women's division is in a good spot right now. If you don't mind Rhea Ripley constantly being in the conversation for the moment. Now, Ripley hasn't held the championship in a little bit, right? Because she lost it on March 3rd to Io Sky. So Rhea Ripley, in the last, 4 months plus, almost 5 months, hasn't held the championship. But it almost feels like she's still kind of held it metaphorically because of her name constantly being in every title defense and somehow weeding her way in. So I totally, point taken. I guess I don't have a side here. I guess I'm not picking a side. I understand what you're saying. Can we have a world title match without Ripley? But if you're WWE, you kind of understand the temptation to put her in. Even if you don't have the intention of making her champion, she's a massive star. Massive. She is, you could make this argument, and I don't think this is hyperbole or over dramatization. I think you could make the case that Rhea Ripley is approaching the title of biggest woman's wrestler of all time. She is arguably, at this point in her career, even without all the days ahead of her, she's got a lot of days in front of her, a lot of great matches in front of her, a lot of rivalries that we haven't even dreamed of yet, or dreamt of, I guess is more proper English. But we aren't even at that point yet. And right now, if her career ended, we could say, some would say, and they wouldn't necessarily be wrong outright, she was one of the greatest women's, and if not the greatest women's wrestler, women's champion of all time. The biggest star that women's professional wrestling has ever produced. I mean, who is a bigger star than Rhea Ripley right now? Charlotte, I guess by name value alone, has more matches under her belt, but Rhea Ripley has exploded onto the scene the last few years, particularly when she joined the Judgment Day is really when things changed, and she brought Edge brought her in. And I mean, it was just from that moment forward was really her awakening, so to speak. And she's exploded onto the scene, and the deal with Dom and her staying heel, but then eventually the fans saying, nope, you're our gal. We love you. And she just turns face. And I see no evidence of the fans turning on her yet. But my point to make this full circle, though, WWE needs to be a little bit cautious about keeping her in the title picture consistently here, because fans, as we're seeing right now from Andrew and I'm sure others, are starting to take note. Hey, she's kind of here a lot. We love her. We still love her. We're not turning on her yet, but we're noticing, right? We see that she is involved in every single title discussion and match here, and I think Rhea certainly can and will have several more title reigns in her career. And those will be fun, but it may be time right now to step back and put her in a match in a couple of rivalries, even throw in the tag team division for just a little bit. Put her in the women's Intercontinental title picture with Becky and with Lyra. I mean, God knows they need new opponents. And then you can bring her back to the title picture around WrestleMania. Give us a breather. It may be kind of like a little bit of a warning sign. Hey, we can't keep her in the title picture from now to Mania. And you You know for sure that WWE has Rhea at least in the conversation for a title match of some sort at WrestleMania 42 in Vegas. So if they want to give us a little breather, right now may be that time. Good observation, Andrew. Thanks for those stats. I would have never even thought about that. Okay. All right, who's next? Oh, I know. It's DJ. There's DJ. So he says, coming off the heels of yet another wrestling weekend for myself and watching GCW's Bash at the Ballpark live and in person in Coney Island, Brooklyn on Saturday, and then TNA's Slammiversary this past Sunday, we now just have a couple of days to go until SummerSlam Night 1 and Night 2. The scheduled matches for SummerSlam are coming in fairly quick, but the number one question still remains somewhat of a mystery to me of whether Seth's injury is a work or a shoot. Anyway, while I continue to ponder that question, I want to mention three things. Well, before I get to those points, DJ, the Seth injury with the Hulk Hogan news, I mean, we have all been kind of sidelined by this kind of stuff of Seth's injury, whether it's a work or not. But Seth's injury is still a massive talking point in terms of storyline. And I have said that the more days that go by, every day that ticks by, is another marker on the side of me believing it's a work, of not hearing anything. We don't hear anything from WWE. Oh, the swelling. Nonsense. This is nonsense. It's been how many weeks now? The swelling is gone. They have the MRI if this is legit injury. There's something weird now going on. I'm still hesitantly in the camp that this is a legit injury, because I've never seen an injury to a big star that we're supposed to believe is real not get reported very quickly, at least within a week, at the most a week, about the MRI results of what they're going to do, how long they expect this person to be out. And with all the technology and all the doctors that WWE has on hand at its disposal, you can't tell me. And they also, by the way, have relationships and working relationships with some of the best surgeons in the world, right down in Birmingham, Alabama. You can't tell me that there's not some kind of diagnosis, at least a rough timetable for his return. Or again, just basic diagnosis, not even a timetable. Just, hey, he's got a torn ligament. He's got 3 torn ligaments. His leg's hanging on by a thread. We've got nothing. We've gotten jack, you know what? And it's suspicious as hell. Again, when there's no news, it makes me more suspicious, because they would have and have no problem and never have in the past telling us when they expect so-and-so to be back. They give us a range and at least give us a diagnosis, and usually it's pretty accurate. But this one, for some reason, they aren't, and it's the swelling, which is nonsense. Now, Kevin Owens had swelling in his back, but it was more not necessarily of the swelling as it was they wanted his back to heal, and his neck to heal, rather, before they went in and did surgery, which I guess went well, and now we hopefully in the next year can welcome back Kevin Owens. I'm aiming for next spring, summertime. Maybe SummerSlam next year for Kevin Owens is my personal unofficial doctored diagnosis there, because neck injuries, it's as serious as it gets. That's not a leg, an elbow, a finger, a toe, even a herniated disc. Your neck is as serious as it can possibly get, and they're not going to fool around with it. They're going to have him 100%. He's probably, I'm sure he is up and around and walking, but bending over, I'm sure is just, it's got to be painful. Sleeping's got to be painful for him. So Kevin Owens is legit. He didn't go right into surgery because the doctors are like, hey, let's let it heal as much as it can. Let the swelling go down as much as it can. Relax your body before we go in and cut, slice and dice you. And, then we'll know how much damage there is. And, this is different. The Seth injury, I've never seen an injury that we're supposed to believe is real treated like this. Sorry, I went on a tangent about Seth's injury. Okay, so from this past Monday night, it seems like Austin Theory is finally splitting up from Grayson Waller, because in a backstage segment, Grayson is seen talking to the New Day and mentioning that A-Town Down Under is done and Grayson could finally get the 240 pounds of dead weight off his back since Theory's injured. I'm happy creative is finally returning back to this potential split of Theory and Waller, which in my opinion should have happened 2 years ago, after there were a couple of teases of a split but never happened. Hopefully this does not become an Otis and Chad Gable feud, because if you remember that, After that feud, Otis hasn't gotten any momentum, while Chad Gable moved on to become a heel and then being repackaged as El Grande Americano. Yeah, let's hope it's not another Otis and Chad. You talk about a fumble. Oh my God. They had that ready-made. I don't know if they overthought it. To me, it's they didn't have any plans for Otis, so they didn't want this big turn to happen, this big babyface turn, and then they have nothing for him. But they could have really done something with Otis, even if it wasn't, again, the end goal doesn't always have to be, world champion. No, he can just be a hot MFer on the roster that the fans love. And they fumbled the hell out of it. What did we get? Do you guys remember the payoff? The payoff was a shove from Otis. After all the humiliation, Otis finally said, oh, okay, well, after all that humiliation in front of millions of people, you know what I'm going to do to you? You know what I'm going to do to you? I'm going to push you. That's what I'm going to do. How do you like that? It was pathetic. I can't believe they fumbled that. So hopefully it's not another remake. Okay. I don't need a rehash of Chad Gable and Otis, even though it was awesome. They just fumbled the finish. It was just horrific. So yeah, Grayson, Waller, and Austin Theory, I hope they're done. I don't need to see them even feud. Just stop working together. I'm fine. Okay, second point. It seems like having Charlotte Flair in a tag team with Alexa gives further mileage for Charlotte in terms of being away from the women's title picture. Plus, she's getting cheered as a babyface from a couple of cities on SmackDown since she began to team up with Alexa. I think obviously the next step is for Alexa and Charlotte to win tag team gold at SummerSlam, but the question remains on how long this team will last. Well, that's going to be the question. And you know the women's tag team division is cursed just by default. And it's a matter of, who's going to turn on who? Does Alexa actually turn heel? I hope not. We've seen Charlotte turn heel a gazillion times. Honestly, they could just lose. Here's what I'd envision. Okay. I agree. They should win. And Charlotte having any babyface momentum at all, WWE should run with. They should run like the wind towards it, not from it. Because the heat that Charlotte gets is go away heat. It's not even, hey, we hope somebody beats you up. We can't wait to tune in and invest our time to see who beats you up. It's a groan. It's an audible groan from her character that is just oversaturated no matter how much time she takes off, and the fans groan and want to change the channel. That's a different kind of heat, and it's not a good heat for a heel. It's just when you don't want to watch the product, that's not the heat you're going for, and that's what Charlotte has. So when anytime she gets this momentum of the fans cheering her, WWE should go all out in this and just let it ride. Let the fans organically just start to gravitate to her, and they have, because she's out of the women's title picture, similar to my suggestion for Rhea Ripley. Rhea may, if I were them, I would follow a similar path for Rhea. But with Charlotte, she's in a good position. She's not on the microphone, which is actually a good thing. Let her just wrestle, do an awesome job in the ring, and leave. And Alexa Bliss, the fans organically love her. There's a nice chemistry there. If they split, and when they split, and if they win the tag belts at SummerSlam, which I think they will, I don't need somebody turning heel. They could just lose the belts in a couple of months and then just kind of go about their business. It doesn't always need to end in a feud. In a match, you can have the two tag team, partners just leave and say, I guess this is over. It was a good run, bro, and leave. That's a thing that can happen, especially when they're not truly a tag team. They're just two single stars that don't have anything else going on that happen to be in the same match on the same team. Therefore, I guess they're a tag team by definition. Okay. And third, I recently watched, for the first time, really, the Mankind versus The Rock WWF title match from In Your House Rock Bottom 1998. And even though The Rock retained the title on a technicality by not getting pinned or being forced to submit, clearly Mankind had the match won when he delivered the mandible claw to The Rock, and The Rock slowly begins to fade as the bell rings, signifying that Mankind had won the title. But Mr. McMahon reversed the decision because The Rock was never pinned or submitted and never said the words, "I quit." It was like watching the similar outcome of Survivor Series 98, in which Mankind never tapped out to the sharpshooter that was delivered by The Rock. Anyway, to make a long story short, looking back at that match and other matches featuring Mankind in 1998, I got the sense that even though Mankind never had the look of a pro wrestler, he did have the presence and likability with the crowd, especially when he introduced Mr. Sacco. I'm looking back at times in wrestling when guys like Dusty Rhodes, Steve Austin, and maybe even CM Punk to an extent, and Dean Ambrose did not have the typical prototypical look of a wrestler, but they had two main things: presence, likability, and of course they could cut good promos. However, right now, in my opinion, the only guy that is currently wrestling in WWE and doesn't fit the prototypical look of a wrestler is Sami Zayn. He's the common man, blue chip worker persona. He has somewhat of a presence, and for the most part, the crowd loves Sami. However, the question still remains: will Sami ever win a world title and get somewhat of a crowd reaction, similar reaction that Jey Uso did when he won the title? I think it's long overdue for Sami to win a world title, as much as it was many years ago when Mankind finally won the WWF title. Yes, thank you, DJ. Certainly, that is a match that I haven't thought about since it probably happened. I mean, I've seen highlights of it in various video packages over the years of Mankind and The Rock at Rock Bottom in 1998. Some of the people listening weren't even alive in 1998. Let that sink in. All right, I'm 40 years old. So, I mean, I was, 13 when that happened? When that match happened, I was 13 years old. So, I was 8th grade, middle school. So, I mean, I can go back into my memory bank and pull that one out. I appreciate that you bring that one up. It makes me want to see highlights of it again, at least. But yeah, I mean, I remember that very much. Some of you don't even know who Mr. Sacco is. If you're a newer viewer of WWE, you're like, what the hell's Mr. Sacco? But to your larger point, the idea that somebody has to look like a prototypical wrestler sometimes actually works against them. Because here's what human beings look for when they support someone, whether it's in some kind of major league sport, in politics, right? In somebody just generally who you like to be your friend. And that is a couple things. Well, most notably, authenticity is a massive pillar in you supporting somebody. If you feel like somebody is not being real with you, whether it's your personal life, professional life, or the entertainment part of your life, where like wrestling, when somebody feels phony, like they're wearing a mask with you, whether it's in person or through a television screen, or in this case, an iPhone screen, you immediately tune them out. You need somebody to relate to. You need to feel like you're being treated with respect as a viewer. And when you don't, you tune out. You don't connect. You're like, I don't even give a damn, right? When you don't feel authenticity, it's this sixth sense we have. I almost said fifth sense. That would have been embarrassing. But it's almost this sixth sense as a human being that we have, that it's like, yeah, this don't feel right. Like, you're not, whatever this isn't real. And look, we all shift kind of our personality depending on who we're talking to. Close friend, parents, wife or husband, your coworkers, people you haven't seen in a long time. I mean, we're all various versions of ourselves throughout the day, right? But they're all pieces of who we really are. And you can tell, and I can tell, when people are phony. And when you're phony and it feels like this isn't really that person, you tune it out. So I think authenticity is number one. But yeah, presence, likability. You can be authentic but not likable. You can be authentic but not have a presence. And being able to cut good promos, yes. But I think cutting good promos it's kind of like saying, or rather it should be probably rephrased as being able to speak to an audience. Being able to get the audience to follow along with your story, whatever that may be, which I guess is part of a quote unquote good promo. And guys like Punk and Dean Ambrose and Dusty Rhodes and Mick Foley, I think their look did help them in the end because they looked different than every other stereotypical bodybuilding wrestler that Vince McMahon fell in love with in the late 80s and early 90s. And, they didn't look like the quote-unquote stereotypical wrestler. And that helped them because it felt like they could, the fans could kind of relate to them more just physically, which is, that's an element too. When you look too perfect, when you look like you've been carved from stone, people can't relate, which I think is something that's working against Jade Cargill, for example. She's almost too perfect. Her physique is too good. And then on top of that, with her personality being completely void of any kind of substance, not good, right? She may be a legit badass and she's stronger than any woman I've seen, and, probably stronger than me, probably. I see it and I go, the problem is so obvious. So you bring up some good points. Sami Zayn, that helps too. He's kind of like the common man. Kevin Owens is another example. He's got the little gut going on, the belly going on, but I don't give a damn. He can cut good promos. He makes you laugh. He feels like an authentic person. That is important. CM Punk and Dean Ambrose, it's kind of the same thing. Some people just look like they're regular old guys, and they've got a presence about them sometimes that's either there or it's not. Whatever that aura is can't be taught. So, and I think Sammy will win a world title. They haven't really talked about it too much as of late, but I think that could be brought back to the forefront even as soon as late year into the Royal Rumble season. Sami Zayn could, if Sami Zayn's in the Royal Rumble, I would say he's in the top 2 or 3 in terms of odds of winning. I think he'll get the same reaction as Jay. In fact, it may even be bigger or better because Sammy has something that Jay doesn't, and I can't put my finger on it, but Sammy is more believable as a champion, I think, than Jay Uso is. And I can't explain how, but if you think about it, you could probably feel what I'm feeling. All right. So let's see. I don't know. Got to check. So that was my email from some patrons. I do want to pop into my Patreon and see if there's anybody in here that wants to chat. So I've gotten some emails to RIP Hulk Hogan. A lot of people messaging me and not really sharing too many thoughts on it, but just saying that they're saddened by the loss. I did have one, and this wasn't really meant for the mailbag, but it's a public comment, so I'll just say I'll put it out there. And from the Hulk Hogan episode that I did last night, this is from a patron, and it says Hulk Hogan is pretty much the reason I started watching wrestling back in '89. My brother was the biggest Macho Man fan at the time, and I remember us wrestling in the backyard and pretending we were Hulk and Savage. I've been hooked on wrestling ever since. Austin took it to another level, and Cena would be this generation's Hogan. But if we're talking wrestling and not personal life, he's definitely on the Mount Rushmore. Thanks for the memories, Hulk. Another says, no bigger hypocrite than the people that comment on social media pertaining to controversial comments someone makes. Love that you pointed that out. What people say in their private lives don't get to get the exposure celebrities get, but for some reason people love to condemn celebrities when they say bad things, regardless of the fact that they have said horrible things themselves that aren't on record. Well, yeah, I mean that's exactly what the point I was making. It just happens that Hulk said something publicly that again should say, if you're going to say something like that, it's got to be private. As a public figure, especially, you can't be saying that kind of stuff and expect the public not to come down hard on you. But there's just no person on this earth that if they were if your private comments that were not meant for public consumption were ever to be published, say on Facebook or in your local paper, this is what John Smith said, without dispute. It's like, here's everything. Here's proof that he said these things. You'd be mortified, right? I mean, I know no one would look at me the same way again. The things I've said in private, but they're meant for private. Again, but as a public figure, you are held to a different standard because, in the court of public opinion, you should always be, a pristine, perfect, especially for the people that you support. You should always or never say anything that's going to offend anybody. And again, it's just nonsense. It's nonsense. Everybody's said things that are just horrific. I mean, we all have. But, alrighty, let's get to a voicemail or two and see where that leads us.
This is DJ Kuzmo back at it again on your Mailbag show. Record you live on a Wednesday morning, and you know what time it is. It's time to
say his name and he appears. I believe in Joe Hendry. I believe in Joe Hendry.
That's right, folks. Joe Hendry is his name. As I take you to my 54th episode of the George Report, and like always, coming to you live from an undisclosed location, we got a jam-packed episode for you today, folks, as I will be covering what took place on the previous episode of TNA Pro Wrestling, what took place this past Saturday, when I went to my first GCW wrestling event called Bash at the Ballpark in Coney Island, Brooklyn, and then, of course, this past Sunday, TNA Slammiversary. But let's take it to a TV taping of TNA Pro Wrestling from last week, in which we were geared up for TNA Slammiversary, and we had a tag team main event of Frankie Kazarian, the self-proclaimed king of TNA, the TNA World Champion Trick Williams, versus Joe Hendry and Mike Santana. This tag team match lasted 9 minutes and 37 seconds. But as the bell rang to begin this match, we see Joe Hendry and Mike Santana having an argument as to who was going to be the one to start the match first for their team. But then all of a sudden, Trick Williams comes from behind and attacks both of them, and then he targets Joe Hendry. We fast forward to the course of this match. Afterwards, Santana delivered a springboard moonsault at the same time to both Williams and Kazarian. Santana gives the much-needed tag to Joe Hendry, and Joe Hendry comes in. He delivers 2 back-to-back clotheslines to Frankie Kazarian and Trick Williams. Then he delivers a cutter to Frankie Kazarian, and then Hendry clotheslines Williams outside of the ring. Hendry is fired up. He proceeds to go for a follow-away slam on Frankie Kazarian, followed by a following slam on Trick Williams. Hendry gets in Santana's face, and they have another stare down. Joe does his usual spin as he was getting ready to do his standing ovation chokeslam. All of a sudden, Mike Santana tags himself in to the shock of Joe Hendry. Santana goes for his finisher, the spin to block on Frankie Kazarian, and 1, 2, 3. Hendry and Santana get the victory in this tag team main event match. But after the match, it looked like Santana was sending a message, because when he tagged himself in, he was sending a message to Joe Hendry that Mike Santana will be the guy in New York to hold the TNA World title after TNA Slammiversary. But then we see Trick Williams comes in back into the ring, and he holds the TNA World title. He raises it up, and he declares that after TNA Slammiversary, he will still be the TNA World Champion. So that was this past Thursday on a TV taping of TNA Pro Wrestling. Now I take you to what took place this past Saturday on the eve of TNA Slammiversary, as I went to my first GCW wrestling event called Bash at the Ballpark at the Maimonides Park in Coney Island, Brooklyn, home of the Brooklyn Cyclones baseball team. And I gotta say, I had a great time. I was at ringside. I was in the third row, and I enjoyed my experience. You know, going to this GCW event, I've seen so many clips of them on the internet, and they have the similar vibe to ECW, but now I got a chance to sit at ringside, and I paid $77 for a ringside seat in the third row, and I gotta say, this was great. It had a lot of wrestlers, especially those from TNA that I'm going to mention here, in Mike Santana and Masha Slamovich. They both had matches on this Bash at the Ballpark card, even though they will be wrestling next night at TNA Slammiversary. And let's talk about Masha Slamovich, the current TNA Knockouts champion. She had a match against Gringo Loco for the JCW title. Gringo Loco is one of those, I guess you could say, very popular names on the indie wrestling circuit. Yes, he's a man, so this was a man versus a woman in this JCW title, and Masha Slamovich retained the championship. Then we had Matt Cardona, I guess you could say, the king of New York, the Deathmatch King, the top guy on the indie wrestling circuit, and he went up against Mike Santana. I was so excited. We got Mike Santana. Mike Santana was coming with his music to the crowd, as he always does. And if you get a chance, I want you to go to my Coos Loves Wrestling channel, and I have a couple of clips. One of those clips features Matt Cardona versus Mike Santana. I videotaped this whole match, so just be mindful of my profanities. It was the alcohol that was talking, because I had a great time watching this match and seeing Mike Santana in person. Mike Santana will get the victory over Matt Cardona in 3 minutes and 15 seconds. But you would assume that with these 2 victories for these 2 TNA stars, in Masha Slamovich, the TNA Knockouts champion, and of course Mike Santana, you would assume that this momentum would carry into TNA Slammiversary, equaling them to get victories, of course, for Mike Santana in the triple threat match, and JCJ losing to Masha Slamovich. But sadly, that did not take place. And here is where we make the transition to TNA Slammiversary from this past Sunday, live from Elmont, New York, in Long Island at the UBS Arena. We also had a very, very memorable event, and I'm going to get to those very quickly. Leon Slater becoming the new TNA X Division champion. He is the youngest in the history of TNA as he defeated Moose. After when he won the match, we got the return of AJ Styles. That's right, the phenomenal AJ Styles. He comes in and congratulates Leon Slater for winning the championship. And now I guess you could say he's getting the rub, getting that potential where he could be that future top guy in TNA. And he's getting put over by a living legend in AJ Styles. So I loved it that the fact that AJ Styles is putting Leon Slater over. We also had the Hardy Boys of Matt Hardy and Jeff Hardy. They won in this absolutely insane ladder match for the TNA World Tag Team Championships. And after when the match was over, we got the return of Bubba Ray Dudley, of course, from the Dudley Boys. And back in TNA, in the olden days, he was part of Team 3D. Bubba Ray comes in and says that he wants to have one final match. Him and Devon going up against the Hardy Boys at TNA's next big pay-per-view, which is called Bound for Glory, which will be happening on Sunday, October 12th. And this will be a very legendary night because this will be the final tag team matchup between the Dudley Boys and the Hardy Boys, one of the greatest tag teams of all time. I can't wait to see that. And those are one of the two memorable moments that took place from this past Sunday at TNA Slammiversary. Now let's get to the sad news for all TNA fans, including myself. And that is, we have a new TNA Knockouts champion in JC Jane as she defeated Masha Slamovich. So now JC Jane has both the NXT Women's Championship and she has the TNA Knockouts Championship. She is part of history of other wrestlers in NXT to hold two championships at the same time. So that was one of the sad news because JC Jane had a lot of help during the course of that match with a lot of shenanigans, which included her group, Fatal Influence, trying to get her to get the victory. We also had a referee bump, and then to add insult to injury, we see JC Jane going for her finisher on Masha Slamovich, and 1, 2, 3, JC Jane is a dual champion with both the TNA Knockouts Championship and the NXT Women's Championship. And the bad news continues for TNA as we get to the main event, the triple threat for the TNA World title of Joe Hendry versus Mike Santana versus Trick Williams. During the course of this match, there was a specific part where it looked like Trick Williams was injured. As we pay attention to that, he could have been singled out and we could have just had Mike Santana versus Joe Hendry in this triple threat match. Remember, this is a no disqualification match. So as the match continues, we see Trick Williams outside being attended to by the referees and of course the doctor. They continue to have their match as he watches and observes what's going on between Joe Hendry and Mike Santana. But as we fast forward to the course of this match, after when we see and Mike Santana tries to get some sort of momentum going against Joe Hendry, eventually, after when Joe Hendry proceeds to go for the standing ovation chokeslam on Mike Santana kicks out at 2. And I paid attention to this moment because this was the first time that I've seen anybody kick out of the standing ovation chokeslam. And then Santana gets fired up and he goes for 2 spin the block lariats on Joe Hendry. And here is the moment where it got me really pissed off as he was about to make the pinfall cover on Joe Hendry. Here comes Trick Williams, who we all thought was injured with a knee injury. He comes in, he shoves Mike Santana out the way and goes for the pinfall cover on Joe Hendry. And 1, 2, 3, and still the TNA World Champion Trick Williams as the Trick NA era continues in TNA. Another sad night as we see yet again the TNA World title in the hands of an NXT superstar. Let's see what happens next as the continuation of this rivalry between NXT and TNA continues. Always remember to believe, say his name, always remember the words that Joe Hendry says anytime, any place, at any show, and most importantly, always remember to do this.
Wave your hands from side to side and say, oh, I believe in Joe Hendry. Joe Hendry is so prestigious.
Once again, this is your guy, DJ Kuzmo. Have a blessed week. Be kind to one another. Stay safe, my friends. Believe and peace.
DJ, thank you for the details here in TNA. And, I know that a lot of people listening to this are, if you're not a TNA viewer, you may be a little bit kind of off-put by TNA news. But I would encourage you, I really would, and I don't mean this to put over DJ, but DJ is watching a product that a lot of people probably should be watching if you like more wrestling and less of the entertainment-y stuff. And we see there's a working relationship with TNA and WWE. I mean, AJ Styles appeared at TNA, and you had awesome seats. If you love wrestling, just professional wrestling as a category, I would encourage you to watch TNA and attend their events. Support them. They're not going to ever compete with WWE. That's why they're having a working relationship. They're not true competition. So in the idea that you have to pick a promotion or not. No, if you love professional wrestling, I mean, you should, in theory, support all promotions. This isn't a rivalry. This isn't Monday Night Wars anymore, So again, that's thank you, DJ, for that and giving us an idea of what's going on there with Matt Cardona, who, I haven't seen him wrestle in a while. Obviously, we have Joe Hendry, which is the name of your report. The in-person perspective, you had great seats, third row back, ringside for $77. Pretty damn good. Try getting that in WWE events nowadays. I mean, the events are just incredibly expensive, especially if you go to a televised or even worse, a PLE. They're pricing a lot of families out of going to wrestling events. And forget it. If you want to go to WrestleMania, you got to take a second mortgage out on your house. It's disgusting, but what more disgusting is really the fans accepting it. If you just don't buy the tickets that WWE is trying to sell you, then that's the biggest way to speak volumes. Instead of just complain, but then you buy them anyway, then WWE doesn't care. You gave them their money. So the TNA, totally reasonably priced tickets for great wrestling action. And you never know when you'll see a WWE star or two pop up there because they do have a working relationship with that promotion, and that's awesome. And it can also give you hope for when so-and-so may come up to the main roster. Joe Hendry, obviously, we've been talking about that for a long time, but others as well. And I would encourage you to watch TNA, at least highlights of it, and maybe you might find something that you're missing. You might look at it and go, wow, I never knew I'd enjoy this product. And you do. It's worth it. It's worth a shot. There's TNA's free promotion for the week. Thank you, DJ, as well. And let's get to another voicemail. I'm not sure who this is. But it seems like a short one. We'll see. Let's take this adventure together.
This is Kara Saunders to join the podcast discuss WWE. My name is Kara Saunders. I'm the professional wrestler, a female, 25 years old, out of the podcast. And give me a call back. 614.
All right, Kara, I had to cut that off because I didn't want your actual phone number going out there. I just for just privacy reasons, right? So Kara Sanders, all right, 25 years old. Now, I don't think you've ever participated in the podcast before. You sound new, but welcome, number one. Number two, if you're actually a pro wrestler, email me. I'd like to know what promotion you're in. It's mailbag at wwepodcast.com if you want to chat. And feel free. I mean, if you would like to contribute, let us know what you do. Again, I'll read your email next week and throw a voicemail at us and let us know how we can see you if possible. Maybe you're not in a televised promotion, but still, it'd be cool to hear from someone that's a female pro wrestler, 25 years old. So good stuff. All right. Well, that'll do it for me, everybody. I hope you've all enjoyed the show. And, again, if you have anything that you'd like to discuss, I might even throw a few emails up on the mailbag, or rather on the weekend review that I do on Sundays. If you want to email us at mailbag@wwepodcast.com, you can do that. And I'd love to hear from everybody. It doesn't have to be Hulk Hogan. Obviously, that's it's running the news cycle right now, but our attention spans are about 4.5 seconds, and it won't last very much longer. As big of a name as Hogan is, and all the memories and stuff, after this week, after WWE does their tributes, we're all going to move on to the next tragedy, whatever that may be. And this is kind of the world we live in. But thank you, everybody. Again, if you want to check us out on Patreon, you can check out this podcast ad-free at patreon.com/WWE podcast. You can check us out on Apple Podcasts and go ad-free there if you don't want to use another app. But also, again, as I mentioned at the top of the show, if you do like scary stuff that's true, that you can listen to, I have some shorter videos. The first video we did was about 3 minutes. Last night was about 10 minutes. Putting these videos together where it's talking about real stuff, whether it's murder or cryptids or aliens or whatever the case. It's Real Eerie Truth. You can find us on YouTube or on Patreon. Check us out and give us some support as we get off the ground talking about things that are not wrestling or politics. How about that for a change? All right. Thanks, everybody, and we will talk on Sunday. Take care.
Thanks for listening to the WWE Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcast app so you don't miss a show, or head to wwepodcast.com. And for all of these shows ad-free, head over to patreon.com/WWE Podcast. Until then, we'll see you next time.